I was recently asked by a close friend, why is Hulk your favorite superhero? And I responded to them, it's because I enjoy a dichotomous character in the vein of Jekyll and Hyde. Maybe not what they were expecting. I know it's a rather pretentious answer for a character that's basically a giant green rage machine. But there's so much more to the Jade-giant, so many layers, so many powers, so much history. Including one of the most iconic, kind of crazy, and strife-filled sagas in film and television. Kind of fitting for the Hulk. I don't know why it took me so long to do this, but this is the history of the Hulk on film on a very special episode of Real School. People remember the monsters, a phrase coined by the legendary Stan Lee that still remains prevalent today. Just before he and Jack Kirby created the Hulk, they realized that the Thing was Marvel's most popular character, so they wanted to create another monster. Part Frankenstein, part Jekyll and Hyde, part Golem from Jewish mythology, and in 1962 they published the very first issue of that monster in The Incredible Hulk #1. The series only lasted 6 issues, but 6 months later, Kirby and Lee rebranded that monster and made him one of the founding members of the iconic Avengers. And like most of those Avengers, it didn't take long for the Hulk to jump from comic to screen. I've often discussed the early 60s Marvel animation in my other history of videos, and if you've seen them, you know that the term animation kind of fits loosely. Yes, once again, it was the Marvel superheroes, and for this video, I'm actually going to cut the animation a little slack, because after doing some more research, I realized it wasn't just the stories that were torn from the pages of the comic book, it was the images as well. Literally, they used a term called xerography, which is basically photocopying. Cutting down on production costs is actually one of the reasons they were able to produce a 65-episode run in just one season. But you could also tell they were rushing a bit. For instance, why was the Hulk always animated as the runt of the Avengers litter? It wasn't until 20 years after the Hulk was created that the Jade-giant finally got the animated treatment he deserved, pairing up with the iconic Spider-Man and his amazing friends. In 1982, they gave us a full hour of animated superhero fun, but only 13 episodes of the Stan Lee narrated The Incredible Hulk. Don't worry, you'll realize why I'm doing that. If 13 episodes of a pretty good animated series wasn't enough for you, you probably felt the same way in 1996, when Fox had a mini renaissance of Marvel animated superheroes with X-Men, Spider-Man, and 21 episodes of the new The Incredible Hulk. The series featured the voice talents of Neil McDonough as Bruce Banner and Luke Perry, because it was the 90s and it was Fox. But the Hulk wasn't the only giant character that made an appearance. The Grey Hulk would often appear, as would She-Hulk. In fact, She-Hulk appeared so often, they actually renamed the series. The Hulk's early animated history was just that, incredible, and there were really some hidden gems. Later on, those hidden gems would continue. Now, compared to DC's animated features, Marvel really never competed, but there are some excellent films in that history. Hulk vs., a direct-to-DVD release in 2009, featured the Jade-giant against both the God of Thunder and an iconic battle against a retro Wolverine. And this is kind of what I liked about Hulk's solo animated features. They may not be perfect, but they bring classic stories to life. Just 1 year after Hulk vs. was released to DVD, they released Planet Hulk, a very solid adaptation of one of Hulk's greatest storylines. It didn't exactly break any sales records, but it didn't disappoint either. It also proved that Hulk, at least animated, could stand on his own. And while he was a huge part, pun intended, of the Avengers direct-to-DVD releases and of the continuing Marvel animated universe, the subpar Marvel animated universe, they did prove one thing, that Hulk not only played a big part in the team animated features, but that he was the only one to get his own series in Hulk and the Agents of Smash, which lasted 52 episodes from 2013 to 2015. Not exactly my cup of tea, as it was a little bit goofy, but then again, it wasn't really made for my generation. But if you really want to know how to do the Hulk a little bit goofy and still make it successful and iconic, I think you know which Hulk we're going to talk about. When you talk about Marvel's biggest hero, he is synonymous with one of pop culture's biggest icons. Just like his DC counterparts with Batman and Adam West and Wonder Woman and Linda Carter, you cannot bring up the Hulk without thinking of Lou Ferrigno, an actor so linked to a character that still to this day he makes cameos in Hulk-related films and still occasionally voices the character. From 1978 to 1982, the aptly named The Incredible Hulk was the reason that most of the world knew about The Incredible Hulk. And they also knew Dr. David Banner, played by actor Bill Bixby. Because apparently TV executives deemed Bruce not a suitable name for a hero. But while many people knew of David Banner and the TV show fairly well, did you know about the made-for-TV movies? Yes, the Incredible Hulk series went all the way into the 90s and actually featured two battles with two of the most iconic Marvel superheroes out there, starting with The Incredible Hulk returns 6 years after the show went off the air. That made-for-TV film was not only supposed to serve as a comeback for The Incredible Hulk, but was also supposed to be a launch pad for a live-action Thor series, which was supposed to star the actor who played Thor in that film, Eric Allen Kramer. But Marvel barely explained why Thor was even in this story, let alone why he deserved his own series. So they moved on to the next hero. And long before that popular Netflix show, Daredevil made his first live-action appearance in 1989's The Trial of The Incredible Hulk. This too was supposed to foster another live-action spin-off, this time for Daredevil, but as you can guess, that didn't happen, simply because interest in the Hulk was beginning to fade at that time. Not to mention that this made-for-TV movie was tonally a little all over the place. It was at times very goofy, but then took darker turns with the plot revealing an attempted rape of one of the characters. The only bit of genius was actually casting John Rhys Davies as the Kingpin. But even Rhys Davies could not save this franchise, and so it seemed like it had run its course. And in 1990, the third made-for-TV film in 3 years was the aptly named The Death of The Incredible Hulk. Sadly, this was the closing chapter of this franchise for a few reasons. There was one more installment planned, the fourth installment aptly named The Rebirth of The Incredible Hulk, but sadly it could not happen with the tragic passing of Bill Bixby in 1993. So we all mourned the loss, and about a decade later, we all mourned a little more. Yes, it was a decade later, in 2003, that we truly mourned the death of the Hulk, and yes, I really mean that. True comic fans often lament Ang Lee's tragic adaptation of the Hulk in 2003, a Hulk which was sadly the first big screen appearance of that character, and yet you would be surprised how much production actually went into this film before it even got off the ground. Production planning for a big screen Hulk actually began 1 year after the final made-for-TV movie, with director Joe Johnston, who would eventually go on and direct Captain America: The First Avenger, taking the helm. But sadly, that didn't last too long, and writer, director, producer Jonathan Hensleigh actually took over after a very successful Jumanji script. But scripts have always seemingly been the Hulk's problem. John Turman was the original writer attached and actually wrote 10 drafts of the original script before anybody even saw a word. Then Michael France came in and was fired before he even wrote a word. Turman came back, wrote 2 more drafts, and then Zach Penn took over and wrote another draft. Then we finally landed on Hensleigh before France came back, rewrote it, and then David Hayter and Michael Tolkien rewrote it again. And yet after all of the hirings, the firings, the writes, the rewrites, we still ended up with Hulk poodles. Now, you might think that it's because director Ang Lee possibly didn't take the Hulk character seriously enough, but the fact of the matter is, Eric Bana, Bruce Banner himself, said that the set was oddly morbid and silent. So what's the solution to that? Make things a little bit darker? I don't know. Just as long as there's not any more giant poodles. And yet after all of that mess, there was seemingly a plan, as Marvel and Universal actually cooperated to create the sophomore effort in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the aptly named, you guessed it, The Incredible Hulk. Now, of course, this isn't really anybody's favorite within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I think it is severely underrated. And let's not forget, without it, there would be no Marvel Cinematic Universe. There were some great moments in this film, most notably for me, Liv Tyler's Betty and Edward Norton's Banner. The chemistry between them was absolutely beautiful, but the Hulk film itself just didn't grab audiences. So back to the drawing board and a third Bruce Banner in 9 years. And while Mark Ruffalo stepped in beautifully to those big green shoes in 2012's blockbuster The Avengers, you could tell that the character was never really going to step to the forefront of the MCU. Which is really tragic in the eyes of this Hulk fan, because the Hulk in both Avengers films thus far has really stolen the show in my opinion. Joss Whedon's version of the Hulk in 2012 was very well received, but in Age of Ultron in 2015, not so much. A lot of fans resented the relationship that the Hulk had with Black Widow and what it did to her character. In my opinion, one of the biggest, stupidest misunderstandings in all of cinematic history, but I understand they didn't like changes to some of their beloved characters. But regardless of how I feel about the Hulk, Marvel feels a little indifferent, and that's fairly clear. In 2017, we got Thor Ragnarok, a buddy picture between the God of Thunder and the Jade-giant. But you know what? Thor Ragnarok was not one of my favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe films. But I get it, I'm in the minority, and it was because this incarnation of the Hulk wasn't one of my favorites. They were trying something new with the character, and I give them all the credit in the world for that. But the awkward toddler, kind of goofy-esque Hulk wasn't the Hulk I wanted to see. However, there was a bigger issue, because the Hulk is actually relegated to being a sidekick. It seems for the foreseeable future, for the next 2 Avengers films and years down the road, that the Hulk is really only going to be trusted by Marvel if he's part of a team, if he's a secondary character. Now, many of you will say it's because of the rights issues with Universal, but I think it goes further than that, and that really hurts as a true Hulk fan. And while it might be a while until we get the next Hulk solo film, I'm just happy that I get my favorite character on the big screen twice in the last year. Poll question, it's an easy one. What's your favorite version of the Hulk? As always, leave your answers in the comment section below. But until next time, Hulk smash. Hey Real students, thanks for watching. If you want to subscribe to Real School, click that round Real School logo right beside me. Also click that damn notification bell so you're aware of all of Real School's new content. You can follow me on Twitter, and of course, if you get anything out of Real School, you can always give a little back. Just click the link in the description below or the button down there, and you can become part of my Patreon team.